Hello and welcome to the second program in a series called Looking Back. I'm Marianne Pleva. During this series, we'll look at the lives of local people, friends and neighbors who have led amazing lives. Today, I am pleased to be here with Jackie Wolff, a longtime resident of Essex. Jackie is a bit of a legend in this town, known by all. When you ask anyone, do you know Jackie Wolff? They think a bit and say, oh yes, her family-owned Greenberg's department store. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Very unexpected, but I'm here.
And I'm so glad. So let's talk about Greenberg's department store. It was here for 50 years, I guess, starting in 1921. Why was that store so special?
Well, I guess it was special because it housed everything. It had 3 floors, the main floor of dry goods, men's, women's, children's. Upstairs was a toy department that my father put in full force around the Christmas holidays with a Santa and running trains. And downstairs was a hardware store with all hardware needs. And they were open until 8 o'clock every night and 9 o'clock on Friday and Saturdays. And if somebody came and knocked on the door, because we lived right in back of the store, could you open the store? Yes. But it was a place to go to. And Essex, when I was little, because I came to Essex at 6 years old and became a Greenberg when my mother married my father.
I just want to, we have a photograph of the store with her dad out front of the store. There it is. And we have some photos of the inside of the store as well. So were there other types of stores like this,
yes,
like a department store?
Yes, there were. There was Brightman's next door. There's a couple of specialty shops. And then around the corner you had Freed's Variety Store, which was like a glorified 5 and 10. But you also in Essex had buildings that are no longer there, but you had a gas station, and next to the gas station was, we called it Ma Pratt's building, and Ma Pratt had an ice cream parlor there. Across the street, we had a building that housed a liquor store on one side and a meat market on the other side called Bazette's, and they lived upstairs, and that's where the parking lot is between the 2 banks. And Essex had everything. They always had the 3 banks, but they had gas stations. They just had everything. But Greenberg's was special because we were at the time a 1-family car, Iverton and Centerbrook, and when the men would come home from working at Verplex or Dauntless Shipyard or Pratt Reed, they would have supper and say, come on, let's go down to Greenberg's. And Greenberg's was always open, and everybody remembers it.
So if we were walking down Main Street today, where exactly was the store located?
It's now the liquor store called That's the Spirit,
Okay.
and it's next to the Essex Savings Bank.
And I think we have a photo of that, of the old location. And
This is me.
I think we have a photo, the real old location. And then we have that's amazing. I think that photo is amazing. That's long before Greenberg's was there. The compliments of Jackie. And this is newer. That's the Spirit.
That's the Spirit. That was Greenberg's. Yeah.
And then,
Long time ago.
so it was located there. And then there we have a photo of looking in the window just to show what stuff costs back then. Aha. And where did we see a shirt was $2 or something like that? Things were a lot different in the 40s and the 50s.
They all went to that store. They all the stores, but they went to Greenberg's. It was, I mean, for another show, I think I could give you enough stories of happenings that happened.
So what was your involvement with the store?
I worked
As
in
a
it.
teenager.
Well, even before teenager. My house was right in back of the store. We had a buzzer system, and my father never believed to let anybody wait to be waited on. So they'd use the buzzer and come into the house, and my mother would try to get a cup of coffee or eat her meal, and she said, Jackie, go in, wait on the customer. So I started waiting on customers very, very young. And it was a family business. My brother went off to college, but he didn't stay that long, and came back and ran the store with his father and my mother, myself, and then I would say that practically everyone who went to Pratt High School at one time or another worked at Greenberg's.
It was a great meeting place. And now, your mom was there 24/7. Oh, I shouldn't say 24/7, but every day she was on the job. So that was her involvement. Did she need any special training, or did she just jump right in?
My mom was a very smart woman. She went to work very early. She was one of the youngest of 5 children, 3 brothers and 1 sister. And she grew up in Norwalk, Connecticut. And she married, not my birth father, Philip Greenberg, when I was 6 years old. And we came to Essex to live. So she always had a business head. And in that sense, she was a very smart woman and always worked.
And she had to learn some different languages, right, to deal with some of the
She could
her
speak
customers.
Polish, and she could speak a little Italian. Yeah.
Good.
But I knew how to speak Hungarian when we lived in Norwalk because we were in a Hungarian neighborhood.
Wow.
That she didn't understand.
Oh, you could talk behind her back then, huh?
Oh,
So where did your customers just come from Essex, or did they come from outside of the area?
No, they came from all over the valley, Ironton, Centerbrook, Saybrook. And then eventually, when I was in high school, I think a senior in high school, my father decided to open up in Saybrook. And he opened up in a building next to Dr. Greenberg. There was my uncle was a doctor in Saybrook, and there was Walter Rochette had built a building. And my father took space there, and then eventually moved across the street where it's next to, well, it was, I think Maxim. It's an antique shop now.
Yeah, there it is, right there.
Yeah.
Max.
That was Greenberg. So they had 2 locations. And then after my father died, my brother kept the Essex store for a few years and then sold it and just maintained the Saybrook store.
Okay. You said you arrived here in when you were quite young, in 1936, correct?
Yep.
And can you tell me like how you picked Essex? How did that all happen?
My mother lived in Norwalk, and she had cousins that had a clothing store. And in those days, you didn't have I-95. You had Merritt, Route 80, and Hutchinson. And I guess on the Merritt, there was a salesman who sold to Phil Greenberg and sold to my mother's cousins. And he mentioned to the cousins that there was a very nice man, widower, living in Essex, Connecticut. Do they know of a nice woman? And they mentioned my mother, and Phil Greenberg and my mother connected and met, and it was a whirlwind romance. They ran off and got married. And the next thing I know, they picked me up, put me in a car, and I woke up in Essex, Connecticut.
Great, great. And you've been...
And my life started as a Greenberg ever since. No regrets.
You said that a lot of the kids worked at the store. How many people work there on a day-to-day basis, say?
I honestly don't know. I mean, there was always maybe 1 or 2, but I don't know. I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know.
It must have been.
Because don't forget, it was busy, but then it could not be busy. And we would get busier in the summertime.
Right. And it must have been a special place at Christmas time, didn't you? Did you decorate like G. Fox?
My
Your
father
windows
would decorate it, but his pleasure was that he loved his trains up on the 3rd floor, 2nd floor, And he would have trains going. He'd put a Santa Claus there, and all the classes from Essex Elementary School would come down and would see Santa Claus and get a grab bag. And then he would get letters thanking him. And I remember he has this huge safe that must be 100 years old that required 3 men to move it, which is now in my garage. And he would put the letters in, and I used to say, well, why are you saving those letters? And he'd say, well, someday when these kids have grown up and have children of their own, I'm going to show it to them. Never happened, but that's what they said.
There were so many stores in downtown Essex. I know people complain that, you know, there's not the variety of stores that there were, but you said the traffic, how did the traffic go? I mean, how was there room for all these cars? Because we have a problem now, but...
Everything in Essex was two-way. The little street, South Main Street, was two-way. Methodist Hill was two-way. Main Street was two-way. Cross Street was two-way. Pratt Street was two-way. And then a selectman came along. I was out of town by that time. I was married, so I wasn't around for when all the happenings of the different selectmen wanted to do things, and they put it on a trial basis, and apparently it stuck, and it's been there ever since, one way.
Right, one way, except it was two-way about 2 days ago. You know, when it rained that day, it was just so rainy, and traffic was going every which way because you couldn't get through. So what was, you mentioned this Ma Pratt's place. That was a place that the kids could hang out, kind of?
The provision stores was a gas station, and next to that, where their parking is now, was a building, and I don't know who owned it or what, but it was called Ma Pratt's. And you could go in there, and it was a counter on the right-hand side and eating on the left, and it had magazines, and you could eat there and get the best ice cream cones. And I didn't realize it until World War II, or I did, but we didn't pay attention to it because it was off base for kids, that behind that building was a pool hall, 2 bowling alleys, upstairs and downstairs, and a laundrette. And Ma Pratt's was, she lived in the White House that's now a gift shop,
Okay.
which the name escapes me.
Walker Loden. Is that the one?
Walker Loden,
Okay.
yes,
I was going to
yes,
say
yes,
where you
yes,
buy
yes.
your ginger snaps.
That's
Right?
right. And she was an avid card player, and she used to sit in the front window with the curtains pulled back, and you could see her playing cards at a table with her friends. Yeah, she was quite something.
Okay. We have a clip from your yearbook, but I think we're going to just take a short break here and go to a little public service announcement, right?
But it would be safe to keep your distance until the
No secret that laughter makes you smile.
reliable sources say that chicken soup has found their way out of this year. Dangerous, but they are returned.
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
Well, we're back. That was quick. I just want to show this slide or this picture of the yearbook ads because we were talking about all the businesses in downtown Essex, and I took a picture of your yearbook of the ads, and well, like in that yearbook, there were 81 ads, and I think not 81, but a great deal of businesses were located in downtown Essex, and I think there's an ad there That's really small for Greenberg's department store. But I'd like to move on to talk about the Iverton Playhouse, because there was a lot of summer stock and a lot of celebrities were around, a buzz downtown, and I'm wondering if you had the opportunity to meet any of those celebrities or see them or sell them goods.
I saw my first show when I was 12 years old at the Iverton Playhouse, Buddy Epson called In the Male Animal, and then what the Iverton Playhouse would do, they would put posters in storefronts, and then they'd give you 2 tickets that you'd get and maybe pay 50 cents or $1 or whatever it was to go to see the show on a Monday or Tuesday night. And I got hooked on theater literally through the Iverton Playhouse. And then because of the store, whoever was playing there would come in. There was Edward Everett Horton, Lulu Parker, I think that was her name. And I used to collect autographs, but would love to go out there and did see. And their ingenue that they really and truly loved out there was a woman by the name of Constance Ford, who later became an actress in Hollywood. But she played in The Glass Menagerie with Gertrude Lawrence. And it was a very important place. And the prop people used to come in and would go into our house to see if there was anything they needed for the stage.
That's great.
So it was, yeah, it all worked. It
Now,
all was
is
part
it
of it.
true that Tallulah Bankhead knocked on your door? Maybe you could tell us about that.
It was in the summer, and my mother and I had just come home from the beach, and we were in our bathing suits, and the front door knocked and rang, and my mother said, who's at the front door? Nobody uses the front door. And we went, and this woman was there, and she says, I'm Tallulah Bankhead. Would you mind opening up the store? And my mother said, Miss Bankhead, the store is open, but you have to go around to the front because that's where the entrance is. So that was a Tallulah Bankhead.
Right.
Yeah.
And you were a big John Wayne fan, so
God.
did you see all of his movies, and where did you have to go to see those movies?
Talbot's was the Essex Theater, movie
Do
theater.
you have a Talbot's photo?
And
Oh, I
it
shouldn't
was
say
owned,
a photo of the old, oh, it looks so nice.
yep. And in that, when you'd walk in, to the left would be Essex Plumbing, which I think it was the Rutans that owned it, and on the other side was another ice cream parlor place called Higgy's. And Essex Movie Theater housed shows that changed twice a week, went on at 7 and 9 at night, and because it housed Paramount and MGM and RKO, John Wayne was always there, and literally he was 4F, so he never went into the service, made all these movies, and I used to sneak in after I saw it twice, after it started,
Yeah,
and watch him again. Yeah,
right.
he was
It must
my
have been
hero.
a lot of fun. Now, were there as many parades back when you were growing up as there are now?
Well, the 2 parades, no, there were only 2. It was the Halloween parade that I marched in from elementary school that we'd start. We had a town hall that was on Prospect Street because Essex Elementary did not have any place, an auditorium. So we would walk from the Essex Elementary down past the Catholic Church and across the street, which is now condos, was the town hall. And the firemen would do it, and we would go down Main Street, come back up, go back to the town hall. But the one thing that I always noticed, that no matter how, what, why, when, and where, there was always an outhouse on the stanchion coming into Essex. When I was a kid, somewhere along the line, they found an outhouse and would stick it right on the stanchion. And then we'd march around, we would give an ice cream, and they had prizes. I think they were $1, $3, and $5. And my father used to make all my costumes, so I always won a prize.
Great. And where would, as a teenager, where would you have gone with your friends, besides the movies, of course, or
Actually,
watching a parade?
You gave me that question, and I digested it and said it, and I said, I really don't know. I think, Iverton, Centerbrook, and Essex only got together in 8th grade at Pratt High School. We all had our own elementary schools. So a lot of relationships were established long before they came into the high school. And I think then we were the war years, and most of our things really took place around the school.
Okay. We have a, oh, there it is.
Yeah,
Picture
this
of,
Pratt High School was a
and that
very,
was
very
all of the students, the whole,
everything.
all 4
We had
grades
all
in that
kinds of
picture.
dances. We had the auditorium there had a stage in the back part. That's the back wall of the parking lot, and we had a upstairs galley that went around so that we could watch the basketball games, and we'd sit on the stage and cheer for them. But the school was really, really our home for what we wanted to do.
And what
in my
was it
recollection.
like living there during the war? Do you have some remembrances?
Yes. A man by the name of Sidney Clark, who was the Dickinson chauffeur, would come around to our school in a station wagon, and we would do recycling of newspapers, be out on the curb. And that was part of the war effort. We were on ration stamps. We dedicated our yearbook, class of 1947.
I think we have a picture of your yearbook.
To those that died, and there were 9 that died, all from different branches of service, and one woman who was Ophelia Tiley, that was the American Red Cross, died in Africa. And then we also took over the back section of Mar Pratt's for our teenage use, and we would have boats come in to the 2 boat yards for repair, which would bring in the crews to help while they were being repaired. So they would use that, and they would go to the movies. There were a lot of activities for this little village.
And what role did Chester Bowles play?
Well, Chester Bowles lived in Essex, and he was appointed OPA administrator, which meant Office of Price Administration. And he was under Franklin Delano Roosevelt's era, and he did a piece in the Saturday Evening Post of how a small town fares in World War II. So he had a picture of Main Street, Essex, and then a picture of my father as being a local businessman, of how he fared during World War II. Do you have a picture of that?
No, I don't have that picture, but I do have a picture of, do we have Jackie's picture in high school? Did we show that already? So I'm going to ask, after you graduated from Pratt High School in 1947,
7.
I didn't change it. Where did you go to college?
I went to Lesley College in Cambridge, came back, got a teaching job in Chester 63 years ago, and went to teach in Chester. Went skiing in Lake Placid over Christmas, met my husband. He was from New York. We had a whirlwind romance. Met him Christmas, married him in May, and the rest is history, and came back to Essex full-time in 1981.
Okay, but you did, you taught in New York.
I taught in New Rochelle for 19 years, kindergarten, and raised 2 children.
And how did it feel to come back? Because when you came back, you said after your mom died, you came back to the same house, right?
It was home.
Yeah.
It was home. It was home. Little tidbit that my daughter, who took her my husband died a year ago, last April, and so she went to a clairvoyant, and she wanted to make an appointment for me. She lives out in Arizona. And I said, I don't need it. My mother died in the house, my father died in the house, and my husband died in the house. I said, if they're not on my heads, I don't know who is.
Right. I just want to talk about one thing, because we talked about this, that where the town park is, there were 3 houses, so I think it's so interesting. And 2 of them were razed, they were demolished, and one was in part razed, but part of it was taken and was put on Pratt Street. And it's now a Victorian. In fact, I think it's now for sale. Kind of one down from the corner. But you were able to,
We watched it
yeah, witness
being
that.
pulled
Right?
across on Cross Street and being pulled around and put on that lot. And that's why it kind of went sideways. And we watched it being put there. And I understand, and I don't remember his last name, but part of that house landed up in Iverton for a native that had there was a gas station by the railroad tracks heading, 153, 154, going out to Westbrook. And there was a gas station there, and the man who owned that, Russell something.
Do we have a picture of the house? Or did you just show? So anyway, the picture of the little Victorian house. There it is. Okay. And so that house, it was Isaiah Pratt's, I guess, at the time it moved.
Yeah.
And they found a portrait in there that's now at the Pratt house. So it's good that it got saved and the other piece got saved. The other thing I just want to talk about, because we're running low on time here, is the Masons. And you told me that the Masons met where the my
father was a Mason, and my mother was Eastern Star, and I showed you the Masons book.
Right.
I still have a copy of the Masons book, and they met up over Rachel Thomas.
Right.
But you have to understand that when you came into Essex, and as you're making the turn, the building that at one point Jeff Flowers owned was called the Chalker Building, and there was pianos in there, and then there was a shop there owned by Susan Potters, and then there was also an appliance shop where, is that Rachel Thomas? There. And Essex was just filled with all different kinds of stores.
Right,
I mean,
right.
it was a store town.
And now we're filled with businesses, real estate agents. Okay.
But they always had a lot of real estate agents. That was immaterial. They have less now than they ever
I
had.
just want to show this one last picture of that little booklet, because I think it's such an interesting story, because stories get a little mixed up, I think, in history. But so this is about the burning of the ships, and this is where this history is, that the burning of the ships, and down on New City Street, there was, they had lit the ships on fire, and this Jude Pratt, who was a Mason, went down there and identified himself as a Mason, and so they put the fire out. Now, and they didn't start his boats on fire again. I've heard that story told lots of different ways, but I think that's interesting to read about. So we're coming very close to the end of the show.
Just make one more comment.
Please.
In 1988, when I came back to Essex in 81, in 88, we had a 50th reunion of Pratt High School. And it was back in the park behind the town hall. And we put out a booklet, and in that booklet, every single class that started at Pratt High School had a page of going from the Prattler to the Osage, which was the yearbook afterwards. And every class is memorized, is remembered in that.
Okay, that's great, and I saw a copy of that, so wonderful. But we're going to have to close. We could chat on forever, but unfortunately, we're out of time. If you'd like to be on the show or would like to host this show, please email me, Marianne Pleve at contessa@gmail.com. Thanks to our crew, Bill Cook, Al Monkovich, Riley Fitzgibbons, and Chris Morgan. And a special thanks to Gretchen Cornwall. And an even more special thanks to Jacquie Wolff, who was willing to share her amazing life with us today and who made this show possible. For Looking Back, I'm Marianne Pleva. Oh, and thanks for watching.
How'd it come out?